Chelsea Vickers, and this is my assignment for Aesthetics and Social Responsibility for the Philosophy of Design course. The topic I've chosen to focus on is persons with disabilities. It is socially responsible to incorporate universal design principles in interior design so that those with disabilities are able to function within a space the same way as everyone else. So designing for disabilities anticipates needs so that special treatment is not required for them, so that people with disabilities can function freely in any environment without requiring help. The standards for disabilities are now represented through the American Disabilities Act. Rather than designing your facility and services for the average user, you design them for people with a broad range of abilities, ages, reading levels, learning styles, languages, cultures, and other characteristics. Accessibility is a lifestyle, and it can be beautiful and natural. Everyone acquires a mobility issue at some point in their life through either injury, illness, or the aging process, and that we need to design more consciously for everyone, incorporating the ADA standards so that everyone gets the respect and dignity that they deserve. So the first theory that I've focused on is the theory of affordances. The human brain understands objects in forms of functionality. The theory of affordances conceptualizes the natural understanding of the use of an object and how its design determines the use of it subconsciously. So working with motor functions of the human body, the theory of affordances can be realized through semantics, and this is the language of movement and understanding function. From the first creation of the wheel, humans have developed their civilization through inventions and the understanding and use of tools and objects to aid them to construct a more convenient life for themselves. The theory of affordances is the unspoken language we have with objects and our natural ability to adapt and understand the world around us. So this is an example of the three different ways we can understand and communicate with an object. So in the first square, the object provides the information about its function and how it needs to be manipulated. The second one is the user has a goal to be established and using in a function and understands the object through how to manipulate it to achieve that goal. And in the third, the user observes the behavior of the movement or the manipulation of the object and then will understand its function from that viewpoint. So applying this theory to persons with disabilities, I've broken it down to form, function, and space. So essentially, form is adapting the form of a space or an object so that it fits the needs of someone with limited abilities, such as this sink here with the underneath opened up so that you can put a wheelchair can slide in underneath it. Function is how we use an object. So sometimes like using a drawer to put dishes in it is much more functional for a person with disabilities than having a cupboard where you open it up. So I exemplified it through the door handle here. So instead of a knob function of turning, you use a lever style handle, which is much easier for persons with disabilities to use. Also, the third is space. So more space is required to go from point A to point B when in a wheelchair or a walker or any kind of disability. You need to consider the spaces that they require to turn around and to function within a space. The next theory that I'm analyzing here today is the stimulation theory. So interior design stimulates the body and the mind, and so to understand this, you need to understand the ranges of senses that are available that we can experience. So you can see here that there are many more than just the 5 senses, including like temperature and how we understand vibration and pressure. So these senses are taken into the environment, and many of them can be interrelated and experienced at the same time. So as interior designers, it's important to understand that our design affects the senses through creating mood and energy. So the more we impact the senses, the more memorable our designs can be. So the way that this can be communicated is through color and light, and you can play with basically the perceived temperature of a space, not necessarily the actual degree, but in which that we perceive, which creates the mood and the energy. So there are many colors that can be used that can be adapted by hue, tint, and shade, and depending on the hue, tint, or shade, they will look lighter or darker. The same thing with lighting. So we go from kelvins, from a warmer glow is a lower Kelvin, and a cooler is a higher Kelvin. So the interaction of these two, the light and color, can balance out an experience. So to give you an example, think of a warm light on a nice blue colored bedroom. So this can be described as calming. However, maybe a cooler light on a blue colored room would make it almost cold and uninviting. So this also is through materials and spatial organization. So as you can see here, materials can create a level of heat, a level of friction. So the smoother materials are a little bit less, are a lot cooler, and the more textured materials are more creating more friction and more heat. So something that can be like, say, a wallpaper that is smooth, but the texture looks bumpy, would give that energy a little bit different, though if you come up close to the wallpaper and if the wallpaper is actually still flat and not grooved as it might appear, it might have a bit of a quality issue to it, but overall it gives the effect of a more warmth. Also with spatial organization, you can see here from centralized, linear, radial, clustered, and grid, they give different types of energy. So if there's something in a central location, maybe there's more heat, more vibration to that area, some more energy than in the more grid-like pattern where energy might be spread out. This can be applied in persons with disabilities through 3 different formats, as I've broken down through my research, and that is materials, lighting, and acoustic and sounds. So in materials, materials communicate a lot of more information than just hot and cold, but a lot more information to people with disabilities as they are much more sensitive, such as grips that have textures indicate safe use, where a smooth surface might be a little bit more dangerous. Lighting is important to consider lighting for persons who are visually impaired or have a mental handicap. So some can be sensitive to the light and some might have a difficulty seeing. So this type of balance requires task lighting in darker areas, or reading or wayfaring indicators are needed. So you can light up a button or a sign, or install a dimmer switch to assure comfort when possible. So reduce glare is a really important component. So reducing glare as much as possible. So either lowering lighting or providing light fixtures that lower glare. So acoustics and sound. So considerations need to definitely be made for those who are sensitive to sound as well as those who are hearing impaired. Having extra hearing aids in, say, a restaurant is so much more useful and is very little cost. So acoustics are also important to be considered in large office spaces, restaurants, and public areas so that the sound is controlled and can be more pleasant for those who might be more sensitive. But when thoroughly considering acoustics of a space, everyone will really benefit from a more comfort-balanced acoustic. So my first case study, I broke them all down into different categories so we can really go and see throughout the world where ADA compliant persons with disabilities designs are possible. So here we start with the residential, the Wounded Warrior Project by Michael Graves in Virginia, USA. This residential project was for wounded warriors coming back from war, for veterans, and the project provides them honor and respect they deserve for giving their lives to military service. So returning from war can leave them with not only physical handicaps, but also mental disabilities such as PTSD, which are addressed within the build. So you can see here, they have handles for pulling, space underneath the countertops, and sinks for knees. And the stovetop is adjustable, so it goes up and down but with a motor, depending on who's using it. So also using theory of affordances, of course, the cart on wheels is functional for maneuvering, and the lowered light switches are easier accessible. Stimulation theory. So this is when we come into more of the PTSD, the mental stimulation. So the open space is great for calming energy and to allow them to move and feel free. Wood materials are comforting and warm. And the windows are very important in these spaces to access nature, to have a visual of nature, and it reduces PTSD symptoms. So not feeling like they're in an enclosed space. The smooth, durable linoleum floors are cushioned, providing warmth and comfort. Case study number 2, we have an office setting. This is Access Living by LCM Architects in Chicago, Illinois, USA. So the award-winning office space was developed not only to be accessible but also sustainable for the nonprofit Access Living. So it's a project that upholds the highest standards in social responsibility is designing this building. And they were exemplary for the nonprofit to show how people with accessibility issues can live freely, and they were able to really develop an atmosphere for the real experience of an office space, so that office spaces can adapt, and this can be done all over the country. So using the theory of affordances here, we have automatic doors. They also have a button if ever difficult to open or needing to signal to open it. And then the ramp entrance is very accessible to coming into the entrance. We have pull handles for function here. And then stimulation theory is seen through the reduced glare lighting, the rounded edges of the tables, and just the spacious corridors that open up the space. I also come through with the glare reduction on the cubicles and the flooring. So that type of carpeting is great for those with sensitivity issues. And then theory of affordances, once again, with the height of the receptionist stand. It's low and it's high as well for anyone to use it. Case study number 3, I have a restaurant. This one's called Contento by Yannick Benjamin in East Harlem, New York, USA. So this was built by a wheelchair-bound sommelier, and the restaurant is the first of its kind in East Harlem. It provides an accessible bar, a restaurant layout, and patio for people with handicaps to have the same bar and restaurant experience like the rest of us. A lot of places in New York are not accessible. It's very old style architecture and design. So this sommelier was very tired of it. He obviously loves the restaurant and bar life, and so he really wanted to create that experience for people who have accessibility issues, and he was very successful in doing so. So you can see here the bar is still like very stylish and it's lowered and it's accessible, which shows the theory of affordances. We have here the theory of affordances once again with the lowered accessible bar, and then a large bathroom door. And I'm sure the kitchen and the bathroom, because of the owner being in a wheelchair, I think the whole space is actually spacious for him to be able to access everything just like anyone else. The stimulation theory is applied through the lights in ambiance, and then there's textures on the wall that create visual creativity and energize the small restaurant, and as well the color use of solid yellow, gold, and then the black furniture and the black backboards kind of blend in with each other as if like a wheelchair could slide in there. You wouldn't know the difference. Also, they have a ramp to the patio turf, which is another theory of affordances, like a functional object space. So case study number 4 is I wanted to focus on something outdoors. So I found a playground. This is Jumpstart Playground by the Canadian Disabilities Participation Project in Somba K Park, Yellowknife, Canada. So Jumpstart Playground is accessible to children with disabilities, and it tackles all multisensory issues, handicaps, and exposes children to connect to understanding accessibility needs through educational games and play. The project was funded by Canadian Tire, and it's located in a lot of parks across Northwest Canada. So the one we're examining here is Yellowknife in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. So you can see here the sensory play for stimulation theory, and also the theory of affordances. So there's the flat ground for easy navigation and lots of space for the wheelchair navigation, as well as ramps for them to climb the structure easily. Also with the theory of affordances, so you have a stimulating and educational game so that people can understand what it's like to have a disability, as well as those with a disability being able to play with it. And also simulation theory is the ground material is soft and comfortable in absorbing vibrations. So instead of sand or rocks, it still gives a great experience for the children. Within playground design, research, and practice, the unique needs, interests, and rights of children with disabilities are beginning to be recognized. So finally here, this is the template of the playground, so they use it all over. They design it and redesign it depending on the space. And so I circled both of the maps are the same, but I circled the stimulation theory in one on the left, and then theory of affordances on the right, and then I circled the ones that showed up for me in the template below. So the surfacing paths, features of inclusive play were most closely highlighted, as you can see here. And finally, in conclusion, I believe that all human beings have a range of sensitivities and connections to the human experience of an environment. Whether disabled or not, understanding this can bring a more inclusive experience for all of those who experience these spaces. So objects have meaning for everyone and even more meaning to persons with disabilities. Enhancing the semiology, the language of the objects within a space, creates a more interactive experience for everyone. The built environment is made for the functional, upright human being, and adapting the environment to disabled people adds an identity for them within the space. It becomes an inviting atmosphere for all types of humans, all races, ages, genders, and disability. So we need to accommodate for the percentage of disabled people in the world to create an adaptable and more spacious, more connected and conscious world. This is not only a social responsibility, but a human right that uplifts us all. Thank you very much.